The Oxford group was steeped in authoritarian and fascist-tinged thinking, and AA retained the authoritarian vibes from that DNA when AA was rebranded, birthed out of the Oxford group cult religion. So the very DNA of Alcoholics Anonymous is from a religious cult. Hello, welcome to the Sobriety Bestie podcast. My name is Kirsten. I am your hostess today for this series that we are on, the AA cult religion DNA. We are going deep again. Today we are talking about the cult that birthed AA, the cult that birthed Alcoholics Anonymous, or the cult that AA was born out of. Part 1 in this series is why does AA lie about how it started? I will share that link if you want to start with part 1. Today we're going to be talking about the cult that birthed AA. So we're going to be looking at the Oxford group, the cult religion that AA was born out of, and we're going to be comparing it to Alcoholics Anonymous so we can see what it came from, how it was born. So in the Oxford group, Look, I wasn't in the Oxford group. I did read some books by people who were in the Oxford group back in the 1930s. I did a lot of research on this. I am not an expert, but I am able to see clearly how AA was just basically almost like copy paste of the Oxford cult religion with some changes. So in the Oxford group, the core thing that I could tell from my look-see through it is that sin is the problem. And that sin is anything that blocks us from God. Anything between us and God, that is called sin, according to the Oxford group. My understanding of AA, when I went through it, your understanding might be different, is that anything that blocks me from the sunlight of the Spirit, from God, is like a resentment or a character defect or something. And so in the Oxford group, you're supposed to get rid of your sins, and in AA, you're supposed to get rid of your character defects or get rid of your resentments, right? And so there's a lot of parallels with how the Oxford group is structured and then how it's rejigged for Alcoholics Anonymous. In the Oxford group, you must surrender self-will to God, and in AA, you must surrender self-will to God. That's like the primary thing there. It's about finding God. In the Oxford group, your identity is essentially a permanent sinner, and so therefore you need God. And in AA, your identity is a permanent alcoholic, and therefore you need a higher power, which you can access only through Bill's 12 Steps to a Higher Power, or the AA program of itself. Both of these groups or programs or cult religions, both of these cult religions frame the human as fundamentally flawed, and they need a lifelong dependence upon the system. In the Oxford group, the core solution is a total surrender to God, to God's will. In an AA, it's also a total surrender to God's will, to a higher power, to give our will and our life over to care of God or a higher power. In the Oxford group, you have to confess your sins to the group. And in Alcoholics Anonymous, you do an inventory and then a confession of your defects, the things blocking you from God, which in Oxford group are sins, to a group or a sponsor. In Oxford group, there is restitution to those harmed. AA does the same. It's called amends, step 8 and 9. Oxford group, we have constant vigilance. A daily moral inventory is done. In AA, we also have constant vigilance and a daily 10th step. And we need to watch out for our defects. We need our daily reprieve in order to maintain our spiritual condition so that we don't pick up that first drink. It's the same model, lifetime cycles of surrender, confession, atonement, and submission. The core practices in the Oxford group, they called it quiet time, like capital Q, capital T. They named everything. It's called loaded language when the cults have all sorts of language for everything. And so the Oxford group has their quiet time. That's for your listening to God. In Alcoholics Anonymous, it's step 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve a relationship with God. Quiet time. Quiet time is step 11. Oxford group has public confessional meetings. The vibe of them is to be humorous and confessional and storytelling. AA has the sharing in meetings, which is essentially the public confession. They're often humorous, confessional storytelling, so it maps one-to-one. In Oxford group, they were called house parties. They were usually at somebody's house, or they were in larger places, or originally they were in Oxford University. That's why it became called Oxford groups. It was in other universities, public places, but these are called house parties where everybody congregates and meets. And there's a lot of social grooming that happens there. The same thing is happening in Alcoholics Anonymous. They're called meetings. There's a sponsorship model, and there's social grooming that happens at the AA meetings as well. So the Oxford group was known for its thought-stopping slogans. A lot of cults do this, thought-stopping techniques. AA does this as well. Things like keep it simple is a big thought stopper. Let's shut you down. Keep it simple. Or live and let live, or turn it over, or pray about it. There's all sorts of thought stopper slogans in both of these. As far as I can tell, the Oxford group and Alcoholics Anonymous, the practices map like directly. There's the same techniques for indoctrination, the same grooming, the same type of things that are happening. I think the deeper truth here is that it's almost like there's a cult playbook. The same techniques are happening in all cults, all cult religions. But Bill did learn these practices, these techniques, and these things when he was in the Oxford group, which Bill was a member of the Oxford group for 2.5 years. Now let's talk about social control and structure. The Oxford group, their worldview was they wanted, or Frank Bookman, the founder of the Oxford group, the leader, he wanted a world ruled by men who were ruled by God. That was his grandiose vision. It was authoritarian elitism. In AA, there's old-timers and sponsors. They're treated as spiritually superior moral authorities in charge in a way, or they're either treated that way, or maybe it's that they're acting that way. So there's definitely authoritarian vibes in Alcoholics Anonymous. It was built on that. So in Oxford group, there's a cult of power. They convert elitist first. They're really going after elite people in Oxford group, or they were. In AA, there's the sponsorship hierarchy. Old-timers are revered. They're unquestioned authorities, not by everybody, of course. In both of them, there's a deference to those who are more spiritual. In Oxford, it really is about spirituality. In AA, it's more about sober time. Is like the social currency is how much sober time you have. That means something about how superior you are in the hierarchy. The fundamental structure is there's the hierarchy, there's the authoritarianism. It fosters obedience and dependence. Let's now look at identity manipulation. So in the Oxford group, your identity is you're a sinner. You can never graduate. You are always in the need of God. It's forever. You are defected and you always need God's help. Alcoholics Anonymous, you are forever an alcoholic. You don't graduate. You are always in need of Alcoholics Anonymous. Both of them make you dependent upon the program. You're always going to need the cult religion in both cases. In Oxford group, you have to have a lifetime vigilance against sin. You're a sinner. And in AA, you have to have a lifelong vigilance against alcoholism, untreated alcoholism. Let's say like the disease is doing push-ups in the parking lot. It's getting stronger. It wants you dead sober. Even if you're decades sober, you have to be vigilant about this kind of monster of like, it's kind of personified as like a monster or as this uncontrolled beast that lives within you that's getting stronger. So you need to be constantly vigilant over that. So both of the groups have the members locked into a permanently flawed identity. This fosters learned helplessness and obedience. Yes. Now let's talk about psychological control techniques. The Oxford group has impossible standards. They have what's called the 4 absolutes. So absolute honesty, absolute purity, absolute unselfishness, and absolute love. That's going to create a shame spiral because it's not attainable. And AA has impossible standards, rigorous honesty, have a clean house. And of course, abstinence in and of itself can lead to a shame spiral if you don't maintain your purity to your sobriety. Both groups have thought-stopping techniques. Both groups have the public group confessions, public vulnerability, group bonding, compliance. Both groups have love bombing of the newcomers, keep coming back. Both have FOMO, you're missing God's plan if you leave Oxford group, you are going to relapse and die if you leave AA. So it's the same mind control in both. It's classic cult psychology. Bill took the playbook from Frank Bookman's Oxford group Cult Religion and turned around and replicated that for Alcoholics Anonymous. The Oxford group has its fascist authoritarian roots. Remember Bookman, we said in the last video how he thanked heaven for a man like Hitler. And then if we look at Bill's writings show authoritarian leanings. The Oxford group members attended, especially the leader, attended the Nazi rallies in Nuremberg and saluted Hitler. And if we look at AA, it has a rigid hierarchy, rigid rules. There's intolerance of dissent, lots of intolerance to dissent or critical thoughts, critical thinking in general. So a lot of the purity culture in Alcoholics Anonymous, even the abstinence and the obedience and the full surrender to God, those all mirror authoritarian patterns. The Oxford group has been criticized as a covert fascist movement. AA uses ideological policing. Dissenters are labeled as dry drunk, not honest, ego-driven, not a real alcoholic, drunk, crazy, all sorts of things. The Oxford group was steeped in authoritarian and fascist-tinged thinking. And AA retained the authoritarian vibes from that DNA when AA was rebranded, birthed out of the Oxford group Cult Religion. So the very DNA of Alcoholics Anonymous is from a religious cult. What do you think? Have you done research on this? Do you know more that I haven't unpacked here? Did this bring up anything for you? What would you like to share? I would love to hear from you in the comments. To me, AA's roots are not neutral, and they're not even spiritual. This is authoritarian cult religion. AA mirrors Oxford group, point by point for me when I look at what was happening inside the Oxford groups and what happens, at least in my experience, inside Alcoholics Anonymous. It's a clear match. AA's roots, AA's DNA is from the Oxford group Cult Religion. What do you think? Is there research that you've done? Is there things that you know that I left out of this video? Please share that in the comments. Do you see AA as a cult religion? Looking at the roots can really help us deconstruct the ideology, get AA out of our heads, because when we can see that it's not what we thought it was, it's definitely not what I thought it was. I thought Bill had good intentions. I thought Bill was legendary. I thought Bill was revolutionary for creating Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm literally saying that less than 2 months ago when I first started talking about AA online. And now that I've gone deeper into it, I've actually deconstructed even more. So I'm on this journey right there with you. And I'm like, wow, it was way worse than I thought. My hope is that by creating this series, it helps you deconstruct even more. So yes, I look forward to seeing you in the comments and have a great day. Bye.